Ilara Knox had survived 43 combat drops, 2 ship explosions, and a diplomatic incident that nearly started an interstellar war. She could handle pressure. She could handle chaos. What she couldn't handle, apparently, was being alone. The Verity's Edge had been her home for 6 years, a sleek reconnaissance vessel designed for solo missions deep into uncharted sectors. Ilara preferred it that way, just her, the stars, and the hum of the engines. No crew to worry about. No lives in her hands except her own. After what happened at Kepler Station, solitude wasn't just a preference. It was survival. Then came ruin. The creature had stumbled aboard during a supply stop on Theta Praxis 3, a backwater moon known more for its black market fuel depots than its wildlife. Ilara had been loading provisions when she heard the noise, a soft, chittering sound, like metal scraping against glass. She'd found him huddled behind a cargo crate. Small, no bigger than a house cat, covered in silvery fur that seemed to shimmer with its own bioluminescence. 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern on his face, blinked up at her with an intelligence that made her breath catch. "Lost? Little guy?" she'd muttered, crouching down. The creature Ruin, as she'd later learned from the database, was a juvenile Kalir, a species classified as endangered and fiercely protected by Galactic Council law. Orphaned, probably. The fuel depot on Theta Praxis wasn't exactly a safe neighborhood for anyone, let alone a defenseless cub. She should have reported it, should have turned him over to the authorities. Instead, Ilara had scooped him up, tucked him under her jacket, and carried him back to the ship. She told herself it was temporary, just until she could find a proper sanctuary. That was 3 months ago. Now, Rune followed her everywhere. When she worked on the navigation console, he perched on the chair beside her, 4 eyes tracking her every movement. When she ate, he sat at the edge of the table, not begging, just watching. When she slept, he curled up at the foot of her bunk, a soft glow emanating from his fur like a living nightlight. It was suffocating. "Rune, I need space," Ilara said one morning, rubbing her temples as the cub sat exactly 3 feet from her workstation, staring. "I'm serious. Go, I don't know, play with something. Explore. You've got the whole ship." Ruin tilted his head, ears twitching. He didn't move. Ilara sighed and stood, walking to the far side of the cockpit. Ruin's eyes followed her, but he remained in place. For exactly 5 seconds. Then, as if pulled by an invisible string, he padded across the floor and sat down again, 15 feet away this time, but still staring. "Okay," Ilara muttered. 50 feet. You stay 50 feet away from me. Got it?" She pointed toward the cargo bay. Rune glanced at her finger, then back at her face. Slowly, he stood and walked toward the bay entrance. He stopped precisely 50 feet from where she stood. Ilara had measured it out on the ship's HUD, and sat down. Then he stared, unblinking, unwavering. "Great," Ilara said to the empty air. "Just great." The distress signal came 2 days later. Ilara had been running a standard patrol sweep when the Verity's Edge picked up the SOS, a garbled transmission from a merchant vessel under attack by raiders. She hesitated. Engaging raiders wasn't part of her mission profile, but the desperation in the captain's voice, the screams in the background, she couldn't ignore it. "Rune, stay here," she ordered, strapping on her combat harness. "I mean it. Don't follow me." Ruin sat 50 feet away, near the cargo bay entrance, watching her with those impossibly expressive eyes. He didn't move, but something in his posture made Ilara uneasy. She shook it off and headed for the airlock. The raid was worse than she'd anticipated. 3 raider ships, heavily armed, had already boarded the merchant vessel. Ilara moved through the corridors like a ghost, her training kicking in as she picked off hostiles one by one. She was good at this, too good, maybe. The muscle memory of violence came back easier than she liked. She just cleared the bridge when the explosion hit. The blast threw her into a bulkhead, her vision swimming as alarms screamed around her. Through the smoke, she saw him, a raider captain, massive and scarred, leveling a plasma cannon at the merchant crew huddled in the corner. Ilara tried to move, but her leg wouldn't respond. Broken. Probably. Her weapon had skittered out of reach. The raider grinned and took aim. Then Rune was there. The cub moved faster than Alara thought possible, a silver blur that launched itself at the raider's face. The man screamed, stumbling backward as Rune's claws raked across his visor. It shouldn't have worked. Rune was too small, too fragile, but the distraction was enough. Alara dragged herself forward, grabbed her sidearm, and fired. The raider dropped. Rune landed lightly beside her, fur glowing brighter now, pulsing with what Alara realized was adrenaline. He chittered softly, nudging her injured leg with his nose. "You followed me," Alara whispered, her voice cracking. "I told you to stay." Rune just stared at her, 4 eyes filled with something that looked absurdly like concern. Back on the Verity's edge, Alara sat in the medbay while the ship's automated systems patched her up. Rune sat exactly 50 feet away, just outside the doorway. Watching. Always. Watching. "Why do you do that?" Alara asked, her voice echoing in the quiet. "Why do you follow me? Why do you stare like that?" Rune tilted his head but didn't answer. Of course he didn't. He was an animal, a cub. He couldn't understand her. Except, Alara pulled up the Kalir database on her wrist console, scrolling through behavioral studies she'd ignored before. Her breath caught as she read. Kalir. Young imprint on a primary caregiver and exhibit extreme protective behaviors. They maintain constant visual contact to monitor for threats and ensure the caregiver's safety. "You're not watching me," Alara whispered, looking at Rune with new eyes. "You're protecting me." Rune's ears perked up, and for the first time since he'd come aboard, he stood and crossed the 50-foot boundary. He walked right up to her, pressed his small body against her uninjured leg, and began to purr a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through her bones. Alara Knox, who had survived 43 combat drops and couldn't remember the last time she'd cried, felt tears streaming down her face. She reached down and scratched behind Rune's ears. "Okay," she said softly. "You can stay close. I think I need that." Rune looked up at her, all 4 eyes shining, and Alara realized something. Maybe humans weren't the only species that understood what it meant to protect someone. Maybe, across the stars, in all the vast and terrifying emptiness of space, the need to care for another wasn't uniquely human at all. Maybe it was universal. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to face the void alone anymore.